Hi everyone, Daniel here. So today I want to take some time to talk about an alternative you may never have heard of for something you use all the time. So everyone uses a computer, everyone kind of has to use a computer, and one of the primary inputs for computers today still is the mouse. But what you might not know about is vertical mice. These are mice that are rotated 90 degrees and sit upright, but greatly affect how your body uses a mouse. First, I want to make it very clear that I'm not offering any sort of medical advice. I'm not a medical professional. If you think you have any sort of physical problems while using a computer, you should seek a medical professional and get their opinion. Now, what is the proper technique for using a mouse? As far as I understand it, the ergonomics of computer use haven't really changed since, well, as long as I've been alive, as long as computers have been used. There are a lot of resources out there if you want to go and find out what all of the aspects of computer ergonomics are. I'm just going to talk specifically about using a mouse. Generally speaking, when you use a mouse, you want the movement to come from your shoulder and your elbow. You don't want to use your wrist or your fingers to move the mouse. The reason for this is use of your wrist and your fingers could lead to a repetitive motion injury. Now, a repetitive motion injury can happen to anyone doing anything. It's a vague term used to describe an injury that happens from your body moving in a repetitive fashion. One of the specific repetitive motion injuries resulting from computer use is carpal tunnel syndrome, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. As I understand it, sure, our hands and wrists are able to move and function in a variety of different ways, but doing the same motions, like moving your wrist back and forth, as some might do for a mouse, doing that for long periods of time can cause strain and stress on the body that it wasn't meant to handle. And so that's why it's recommended that you move a mouse with your shoulder and elbow, something that I have not done myself over the years. And when I went and built my first computer last year, I realized that using a mouse for long periods of time is something I'm just not capable of doing. Now, do as I say, not as I do. I've yet to see a professional about my personal joint issues, but I think the combination of not using a mouse properly and family history of joint problems has resulted in symptoms that do line up with carpal tunnel syndrome. So I can't actually use a traditional mouse for long periods of time. It causes me pain, and I just can't do it because I'm so used to moving a mouse back and forth, left to right, with my wrist and with my fingers as well, which is something you're not supposed to do, but I just can't get it out of my head. So that's where vertical mice come in. Also, another aspect of mouse use that is promoted by some manufacturers of these vertical mice that I'm going to talk about here shortly is the orientation of your forearm when you're using a mouse. If you think about it, the natural resting position for your arm, so if you were to rest your arms by your side, the palm is more or less pointing inwards towards your body, but when you're using a traditional mouse, you turn your hand so that your palm is facing downwards. That also twists your forearm. You can kind of feel it. If you put your offhand on your arm, you can feel your muscles tightening. You can feel the bones in your arm twisting in order for you to do that. And again, I'm not a medical professional, but these companies making these vertical mice say that's not a good thing for computer ergonomics for your body to be doing for long periods of time. Makes sense, reasonable sense to me. So these vertical mice that I got to try out In order to help my physical ailments while using a computer, first one up here is from Anker. This one looks like a shark fin. It's pretty cool looking, but otherwise very standard. It has, you know, left and right mouse buttons, a scroll wheel. It has backwards and forwards buttons, as well as a DPI button. Putting your hand around this mouse is as if you were to make a claw shape with your hand, and then the mouse fills the void between your fingers and thumb. I have average sized hands for a white American dude, so it fits very comfortably in my hand. So the main difference here when using a vertical mouse day to day as opposed to a regular mouse is that when you're pressing the buttons, you're applying a horizontal force. You see, with a normal mouse, you're pushing down. That also means there's going to be some sort of surface that your mouse is resting on that is pushing back when you are pushing down on the mouse, and therefore your mouse doesn't go anywhere. But that's not the case with a vertical mouse. You're applying a horizontal force. That means the primary force that would be to stop the mouse from moving with your button press would be your thumb. So you have to keep that in mind when using a vertical mouse. You need to essentially pinch it a little bit. I'm trying not to overemphasize how much force this is. It's still the same amount of force you can expect on a normal mouse. It's just that it's going horizontally now, so you need to compensate for that just a little bit. Something to be aware of. It didn't take me more than a week to reaccustom myself to using this kind of mouse. Another thing I would like to point out that's really nice about this mouse is the middle scroll wheel button. On most mice, that scroll wheel button click takes a little bit more force than the left and right mouse buttons, and so as you can imagine what I previously talked about, that could be an issue. But on this Anker mouse is nice because when you push upwards on that scroll wheel, it will also activate the click. So it's very easy for me to simply take my middle finger and just push up when I want to activate the middle click on the mouse. And so that's really nice. This mouse is very light, so that horizontal force is why this is an issue with this mouse in particular. Something to watch out for all vertical mice, but because this is so light, even with batteries, that's why I mention it. This is a fairly cheap entry-level vertical mouse. It goes for about $20 on Amazon. If you're looking to get into vertical mice and you're not sure what to get, I think this is a great entry point. Works well, and it gets across what vertical mice are trying to do for you. I also got a second mouse from Anker. This is the more recent model of the two that Anker offer. There aren't a lot of huge differences. You'll notice that the design is different. It looks more like a regular mouse, simply turned 90 degrees. They went and moved the DPI switch to a location that you're less likely to hit by accident. They also added a little lip on the bottom for your pinky to rest. Some people were complaining with the original model that their pinky was dragging while using that mouse, so they added that. Now, at first glance, this isn't very different, but because that shark fin is gone, it now has a smooth edge, top edge to it. I found myself far more likely for my palm to rise up on the mouse while using it, and so I was essentially holding it like a regular mouse. Sure, my fingers were still curling around the side to use the buttons, but my palm was still on top, and I was essentially moving it like a regular mouse like I was doing before, and I have a tendency to move my wrist side to side, which is something you're not supposed to. And because of that, I stopped using this mouse the day I got it. I would not recommend the newer Anker mouse at all because of that. If you want a cheap entry vertical mouse, I would recommend the shark fin Anker mouse. The third and final vertical mouse that I got and tested out is from JTech. This mouse looks considerably different. It's more like a mouse and a joystick got mashed together. It has this cylindrical round body to it. And so when you go to grasp it, when you go to use it, your entire hand goes around it and feels very comfortable. It has this nice either soft plastic or a hard rubber texture to it for your palm and thumb, so it feels very nice in your hand, doesn't want to go anywhere. Very nice big buttons on it. A little bit difficult to use the scroll wheel because of these big separated left and right buttons, but it's not too big of a deal. Overall, I like the ergonomics of this mouse, so it's something I can look past. I also very much like that the back and back and forward buttons are split with your thumb, so there's no way you can accidentally hit one or the other. You're gonna know which one you're hitting when you're using the mouse. There's also a very nice big DPI button located on the top of this mouse so that you can cycle through the 3 different DPI settings built into this mouse. And then on the bottom, you have a detachable palm rest that you can take off if you want to for some reason, but I found it very helpful for the bottom of my hand to rest on the mouse while I'm using it. It doesn't add any additional friction. From what I can tell, it's made of the same material on the bottom as the rest of the mouse. I really like this mouse as a vertical mouse. I felt like it very much promoted the way and emphasized the way you're supposed to be using a mouse. Sure, you could, I guess, technically move your wrist side to side while using this mouse, but because this mouse is nice and big and meaty and my entire hand goes around it and my hand is more or less vertical, I very much feel like I have to move it with my shoulder and with my elbow. I definitely don't want to move this with my fingers at all. And so I think that's a really good thing. This mouse is a little bit more expensive. The Anker mouses, like I said, run about $20 on Amazon. Sometimes this comes down to the same price as well, but I think it's a little bit more. I definitely think it's worth it. Beyond these mice, if you're looking into a vertical mouse, then a step above this would be $70 and $80, which is a lot for some people to spend on a vertical mouse, especially if you haven't used one before and you're not sure you like it. So these are definitely the mice to try if you want to get into vertical mice. As far as use of a vertical mouse in specific scenarios, day-to-day regular usage of a vertical mouse isn't going to be much different compared to a regular mouse. When it comes to first-person gaming, I actually don't think a vertical mouse would work too well. Even if you're using a regular mouse and you're using it as one should be, moving at the shoulder and elbow, it's more difficult to get those smaller, precise movements out of the mouse that you would need for a first-person shooter. I think because vertical mice emphasize that sort of movement, you're not gonna have a good time if you're playing a first-person shooter that needs very accurate aiming. If you're playing strategy games or character action games or even an MMO, I think you should be okay as long as you can dial in that sensitivity to what you like and you're used to using a vertical mouse. I think it would be fine for those kind of games. First-person shooters, though, not too sure about. And then when it comes to production work, so if you're using CAD software or something in the Adobe suite, I think it works fairly well. What I typically do if I'm using Photoshop or Premiere Pro to edit these videos, what I typically do is I utilize the DPI button that's on all of these mice to drop down to the lowest setting so that the mouse moves more slowly and I can get more accurate movements out of it. And then if I need to grab a file or something, it's very easy to click that DPI button and get the mouse moving more quickly if I need it. So that's great. Something I do want to mention about these mice, it seems to me in my research that there are a lot of clones. So there are a lot of mice that will look identical to the ones that I've shown you today from different companies. My guess is there is someone that owns these design patents for these mice and they simply license it out to companies for them to make them. So be wary of that when you're on Amazon or some other outlet looking for a vertical mouse. Buy from a reputable seller, someone with good reviews, a brand that you're aware of like Anchor. So watch out for that. Otherwise, I think that covers everything I wanted to talk about with vertical mice. I've had a lot of issues using a mouse this past year when I built my computer, and when I switched over to a vertical mouse, those essentially disappeared, and I'm never going back to a regular mouse. I will be using a vertical mouse for as long as I need to be using a mouse for the rest of my life. If you have any questions about vertical mice, post in the comments below and I will do my best to answer them. Otherwise, thank you all for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye.